Donkey Kong Bonanza has 5 main transformations, and when you unlock each one, there's a little tutorial for it. These are pretty easy and can be beaten without each respective bonanza. However, after you beat the game, you unlock the rehearsals, which are entire levels focused on a single transformation. The elders recommend you having every skill unlocked before entering each one, but I decided to ignore them. Is it possible to beat every rehearsal without any skill unlocked? Well, this is actually harder than it seems. Some skills unlock crucial abilities, such as the gliding ability with the ostrich. Now, since I had already beaten the bonanzas once before in my normal playthrough, some things might change, but I'll mention them when we get there. Also, I will not be grabbing any of the extra Bonandium gems. I'm only here to see if you can get it from start to finish. With that said, let's get on to the first transformation, the Kong Bonanza. Let's go over the upgrades we're gonna be missing here. The skills you can unlock are a stronger charged punch, a faster charged punch, and armor so that you don't lose your charged punch when you get hit. That took so long to say. Every rehearsal is composed by a little tutorial part and 5 different sections. Well, every rehearsal but the ostrich one. The tutorial here is very simple. Just hit back one of the explosive guys and you're set. The first section has us killing enemies, but wants us to focus on the one covered by spikes. To kill them, grab an explosive rock and throw it at him. Do the same thing here, and that's section 1. In the second section, you guide these to the bombs with a fully charged punch, activate them. It's tougher than it seems with the fact that the charged punch takes ages to charge, but it's manageable enough. In the next section, you have to throw the stompoids into the void. This one is also pretty easy. Worry about the thorns. I've been searching the name of this material for like 10 minutes because my game is in Spanish and I can't be bothered to change it. And I couldn't find anything, so thorns is what you get. In the next section, you just have to have good aim. Throw the Roluscoids back at the Molvoloid. Okay, who named these enemies, bro? And just like that, we're off to the final section. And believe it or not, it is so free. Just punch the big giant rock to hit the enemies. And with that, we have completed the first rehearsal, but don't worry because they get much harder. The next transformation is the zebra one, and each rehearsal is all about speed. Let's check out the skills we won't be using here. First of all, Break Blast. It's a niche ability, but isn't that useful. However, the very next one, the Charge Dash, is the most important skill for this rehearsal, and it only makes the acceleration last longer. I'm gonna show you right now the tutorial for this rehearsal, because it's actually kinda tight without it lasting long. The other two abilities, I'll admit I've never even used them in my normal playthrough, so we don't have to worry about those. With that said, let's get into the first section. This one is pretty straightforward, you just have to go fast through the course. You can run on walls and it'll be faster than grabbing lift-up material. In the second section, you're supposed to hit the obstacles to create paths, but I didn't really feel like it, so I just cheesed it by doing something called the Fast Aerial Turf Surf, or FATS for sure, I'm not even kidding. I'll talk more about them later, but basically, jumping, turf surfing, and attacking immediately to gain a lot of speed and distance quickly. The third section is in 2D, and it's pretty much the same thing as usual. I almost died here surprisingly, but still nothing too crazy. Same thing can be said about the fourth section. It's mostly climbing on walls and some not so hard platform. The final section is much longer than the others, and you're supposed to have knowledge about material interaction, but who needs it when you can jump to the side? This lava section did screw me up though, because you need the ice here, but I still managed to beat it. Overall, the zebra rehearsal seemed to be challenging, but wasn't so bad, unlike the next one. Okay, I've been leading up to this the whole video. The Ostrich Bonanza rehearsal sucked a lot for one main reason. That reason is found in the skills you can unlock with it. Gliding. Yep, you cannot glide in a level about gliding. Not only that, but the next skill is also for fluttering further and faster. This is gonna suck. We also don't have egg bombs, but who cares at this point, you know it's gonna be bad. Luckily, we slept to gain extra hearts before entering this, because how on earth would we have gotten past the very first part without damage boosting? Let's just hope the next part is easier. Wait, what? What do you mean I have to do this without gliding? I gave the first jump a shot and I was surprised. I did it first try. Was it gonna be this easy all the way through? Nope, forget it. Look at that distance. There's no way we can make it there. Even if we did, the next jump would be even harder because we won't have any terrain left as we would have used it to get across. I completely thought the challenge was ruined, but I still had some ideas, so I started trying them out. The most obvious one was to make a bridge. But no, you cannot bridge across far enough. There's an invisible barrier. What about upwards? Well, after a long time, I also reached the limit and that's not enough height to get across everything. It's not even close. I tried shooting terrain in front of me, but nope, the wing thingies cannot hold terrain, and neither can the spike pillars that move. But then, I tried something else. I tried to make the same jump, but this time I would get on the terrain and get up, then stall again and repeat. This would get me a bit further. I even got to hit the spike, but it wasn't quite enough. Turns out the solution to get there was just discovering a new stalling method. Okay, maybe I'm lying, I don't actually know if this had already been discovered or not. Heck, there might even be a better method, but I'm proud to say that I figured this one out on my own. Press CL twice quickly, then hit upwards, stop flying and hit forwards once and repeat this whole process. This series of buttons made it just possible to get there, but without the piece of terrain. Okay, that's a good method, but how am I supposed to now get to the next platform? The main reason that worked is because I had terrain, but now I don't have anything. Or do I? You see, there's one more way to get terrain, and that's by playing the pay-to-win game. That's right, if you put an amiibo, it will spawn a random piece of terrain, and although there's not much space and it's hard to grab as it falls down, you actually can grab it and get to the next platform. From here, you can get up to a higher platform, but I'm gonna make a stop here. Remember at the start of the video where I said I'd already played this once and some things might change? Well, this is one of the things that changed. Normally, this higher platform is covered in those spikes that you have to break with a neck bomb. So you might think that it's impossible then, but no. First of all, you can make the jump even if you don't go to the higher platform. And second of all, if you scan a Donkey Kong amiibo, it will spawn the Kong letters, which are explosive and will also break the spikes. Okay, back to the challenge. When you reach the mainland, there are two paths you can take, and you need to get to the end of both of them to spawn a cannon that will take you to the top. So, at the start of the section, it's just some easy stuff you can do with and without gliding, but no one could have prepared me for the next thing. Have you seen that distance? There's no way that's possible. Well, you can flutter right after the cannon shot you and you can stay bouncing in the rain, but that still won't be enough. I brought a piece of terrain and didn't chug and jump to get on top of it, but this still wasn't enough. Looking back, I realized you could have just grabbed a piece of terrain without touching the floor, and when you get ballooned, you will still have that piece of terrain. But oh well. This is post-editing, I actually tried doing it, but when you don't have terrain, you get ballooned up there, but when you do have terrain, you go out of bounds and then you warp back to the beginning of the section, so this wouldn't actually work. Instead, I started bridging upwards, and guess what? There's a ceiling. But then I tried to bounce high and stall with the trick I mentioned earlier, and it worked. That's a nice one. And I definitely should have tried that before building an unnecessary bridge that took 10 minutes. The rest of this section was nothing special. The last part got tricky, but there was nothing to worry about. I had over 70 balloons. Well, there actually was something to worry about. Since you need to make a huge jump again, and I don't have any terrain, not only that, but the jump is even longer distance, and the terrain you land on electrifies you and could kill you. That means going back to the start of the section. I also only have 3 health points because I don't have any skills unlocked. There isn't enough space, but notice how the things we were bouncing on kept spinning? If you wait long enough, they'll come back to you, and you can use this short time to spawn a piece of terrain with an amiibo. I also thankfully made the jump first try. That's one section down, the other hopefully will be easier. Remember the first jump with the bouncy ring before? Well, this time we have to make the same jump, but the ring is lava. How awesome. Luckily, there was ice below, so we can grab one and when being thrown out of the cannon, shoot it at the lava so it turns into obsidian. It took me a lot of tries, but I manipulated Pauline so that she threw ice as well in 2-player mode, finally making a circle around the ring so that I could get up on top, grab a piece of terrain and fly so that I could finally start the section. Yeah, that wasn't even the start of the section. The jump and the method was harder than the bouncy section, but this time, this whole section entirely is centered around gliding through rings of lava. Luckily, all distances are easy to cover by using the same tech I showed earlier up until we reach this section, which clearly cannot be covered in a normal method. I had to use the ice method from earlier, this time with snow. By converting the lava, you can make a path across. Keep in mind that every time I die, I start from the beginning of the section. The next part is the same thing, but just a bit harder. I mean, come on. This is a large distance and clearly cannot be covered just by stalling. So you have to convert one of those to obsidian and then land there while they sometimes move around and then keep flying without getting hit by the lava. I died, what did you expect? But afterwards I finally reached the final part of this area. It's just a marathon at this point. It's like triple the size and rings keep moving and they are tiny and hard to stand on. So the pressure is all on me, especially after I was at the end of the section but got hit with lava. So I was at half a heart at the end of the section. I clearly didn't want to do it all again. So I locked in and finally beat the damn section. Or at least that's what they want you to believe, because now you have to make it back to the mainland. This jump is too far, so I started bridging, but there was a barrier. Why do I even try to bridge anymore? There was only one way, and that was to go back to the wind and then move on from there. At last, we can finally use the cannon to move on to the final part. At this point, I had spent around an hour and a half figuring out these tricks and putting them in place, but it was all for nothing. Clearly, there wasn't a way to cross this. I mean, it's just unfair. I don't even get 20% of the way they're optimizing as much as possible. So I'm sad to say that I cannot beat every rehearsal without skill points. But even though I can beat it, doesn't mean it's impossible. There's one trick in Donkey Kong Bonanza, arguably one of the hardest to perform in the entire game, that lets you fly. I'm not gonna go much deeper into this, but know that the fats from earlier can be chained together in a complicated way to be able to fly. Check Nycro's video out if you want more information. This trick is insanely hard though, and this is such a big distance, so I sadly am not capable of getting this, but it's theoretically possible. Let's finally move on to the next bonanza. The elephant bonanza is next. Let's take a look to see what skills we will not be using. The first one will unlock the ability to move up to 10 chunks of terrain every time, which we might need to solve some of the puzzles. The other three just upgrade your target in many ways. This includes having increased range and distance, being able to land longer, and also explode things faster. With this in mind, let's start with the first one. The tutorial part is pretty tricky. Throw back the chunk of water to kill the enemy and skip to the cannon here. The first section is also the first where we need to worry about always having chunks of terrain in your trunk, because if you run out, you have to follow the section all of it. What you need to do here is get on top of these enemies and throw a chunk of salt. Luckily, there are these blocks which means to regenerate salt at any moment, so if we remember to use them, we can have infinite chunks of salt. By doing this, we can do the rest of the enemies and move on to the next section. Here, they have to do which interchanges into materials when taken. You're supposed to know raw materials are useful for those scenarios where you need to kill these from overloads, but we can skip all these parts entirely by doing it quickly. Well, every part except the last part, where you do need to kill it. Thankfully, it's easy, just throw salt at the top of its head. The next section consists of more puzzles, this time with 2 parts, which means 3 materials, and we only have space for 5 chunks, so this could get tricky. First, kill these scorpions by using a luminous chunk, or whatever this terrain is called. In the next section, there are just too many enemies, so I decided to skip it. This stuff was surprisingly difficult, but after a bit, I did it. But of course, the enemies hit the harp and changed the luminous chunk to golden, so I couldn't really do anything about it except going back. But without a chunk of terrain in hand, I was stuck here and could not go back. I could have fallen more than 40 times and eventually I would have wasted my luminous, but I would have died. Honestly, I didn't want to, so I restarted the whole thing. This time, instead of doing the jump, I was trying to kill the enemy. Without 10 chunks though, it's much harder. Anytime I killed them, I would just not have chunks left, so I had to restart. But this time I didn't. Instead, I went into 2 player mode, copied Fractinium, and started to click upwards to skip the wall. To my absolute surprise, it didn't actually work for me. The last part of this section is the same enemy thing from earlier, but worse, since they have feet and heads of different materials. Instead, I just guided them to the void, so they fell and died. We are off to the final part, where you're supposed to do a large landing to get across both sides, but this is what I did. First, I skipped this section entirely. In the second part, I just jumped down and sucked lava to make a path through the water, and with the water I can make some platforms across, then change obsidian to lift up material, and jump across. The elephant monster had some puzzles, but it was fun in the end. We're off to the Snake Bonanza rehearsal, the last rehearsal based around a single transformation. We'll be missing out on the following skills: Jump Burst, which damages enemies when you first jump off the ground, Better Glare, which makes our glare longer, Better Charge Jump, which makes you be able to charge a jump mid-air, and Meteor Punch, a strong dive right after you jumped high. The tutorial part is pretty simple. Grab a piece of terrain and charge a jump several times in a row. The first section is where it really starts. It's a platforming section with the alternate jelly. For some reason I was trying to cheese it, but this actually was worse than actually doing what you're supposed to do. By doing the intended route, you can make it easily though. In the second section, you have to grab one of the explosive rocks and throw it at the spiky wall to reveal a hole. These will go upwards though, so you need to go at their speed to be able to fit in the hole in time. This can get easy by just using your glare ability. The glare doesn't last very long, so it can be annoying to time it properly, but you are always able to keep a glare activated, so this is possible, totally. In fact, the same thing can be said about the next 2 sections. Both try utilizing the glare in different ways. Punch these and reveals platforms that move fast, so you need to slow them down. Here, where blocks fall on you and you just need to use the glare to be able to jump through them. So these are annoying, but totally doable. The last section wasn't that much harder either, but it can get tricky without the mid-air jump. The premise of this section is to scale up these walls without them knocking you all the way down. Some are hard to get through, especially the last one. You clearly cannot cover this much distance upwards, so instead I went to the side and got on top of him. When he tried to knock me off, I just climbed and got to the end. The Snake Bonanza was more annoying than hard, but it was doable. So, is this it? Well, there's actually one more challenge we need to cover. And you all know it and love it, the final rehearsal. Cool thing about this one though, you can actually turn into DK in this rehearsal, so you're not locked to a specific transformation. So why the hell not? Let's try beating it without transformations too. The very first section is already annoying. Of course it's annoying, it was made for the damn ostrich. I'm gonna have nightmares about ostriches. We can grab crystal or fruit to surf turf to try to get past it, but it's not even near enough distance to make it across. So I had to use my secret weapon once again, Amiibo. I learned a couple of things here. First of all, in the rehearsals, you can only spawn 3 materials with the normal Amiibo. And the only useful one here is the exploding one, because it resists the longest without breaking. The second thing is that if you were to explode the spikes here, there's bouncy terrain under it. Neat. After a couple of tries, I did get past this section, but it wasn't an easy feat. Why did they put this at the beginning? Now I gotta redo it every time I die. Anyways, the next section can be easily cheesed by just going on the wall, so we don't have to worry about it. This next section is the bane of my existence though. You have to move the platform by hitting the blue thingy, while enemies are raining on you. These enemies, however, cannot be killed without the Kong Bonanza, because they are made of concrete. They are so hard to avoid too, they often killed my run here. It's possible of course, but it's difficult to avoid the enemies while constantly having to punch the thing. Thankfully, we are halfway there, so it isn't going too bad. The next section is pretty easy too, just ride on the platform and grab a luminous chunk whenever you meet a purple dark wall. Avoiding the enemies isn't too hard either. This is where it gets interesting, if it wasn't interesting already. You're supposed to grab concrete from this guy with a combinenza, a strong enough material to grind the rails and get to the cannon. However, we cannot do that here and there's no material that is strong enough that we can use. So we have two options. First, doing IFETs as mentioned earlier. Second, use Amiibo, baby, hell yeah. It's a bit wonky but it works with the explosive rock. We're almost at the end, let's keep pushing. The 2D section is annoying as well. There's concrete everywhere so we need explosive rocks from the Amiibos to break it. There's not enough space anywhere but the beginning, so we break a wall, we go back, spawn an explosive rock and break it again. We keep doing that until we finally reach the final area. Normally, you use the zebra to run on the water, but here we cannot do that. We cannot swim in the water, we cannot turf surf in the water, heck, we cannot even IFA if we wanted to because there's a ceiling. Not even Amiibos could save us here. The only thing stopping us from beating every rehearsal is this part. I already finished recording and thought that it was impossible, but one legend in my server let me know about a trick that could work. May I present to you Nintendo Let's Play. He showed me a glitch I had no clue existed, where if you grind on a rail and spam A while your hearts are being restored from a juice and hold a certain direction, you'll get flung. This can be used in the final section, but the trick was very precise, and getting to the part with the juice was also a hard task. It took me some tries, but I got here in the end. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't even know what I was supposed to do, but this is what happened. I accidentally skipped the last part of the rehearsal and beat it without any transformations. Shoutouts to him because I wouldn't have been able to beat it otherwise. Anyways, that answers my question. It is completely possible to beat every rehearsal without skill points. This video took so long to make, so I'd appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Expect more challenge vids in the future, but with that said, thank you for watching.